No country has ever prospered that failed to put its own interests first. We will no longer surrender this country or its people to the false song of globalism.
New Right Network presents Right Now, the featured podcast of New Right Network. Mobilizing, countering the left, energizing the right. New Right Network, home of the New Right movement.
Welcome to Right Now, the official podcast of the New Right Network. I'm Rose Taylor, senior editor with New Right Network, and with me today is Steve MUDFLAP McGrew. Steve MUDFLAP McGrew is a conservative comedian who prides himself on being an equal opportunity offender comedian. He will make jokes about anything and everything. Glad to have you here today, Steve. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me here, Rose. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to talk to you today.
I got y'all's message about the interview, and I was like, sweet, let's do this.
Well, I'm really glad that you decided to join us. I've been looking a little bit at your stuff. You seem like a pretty funny guy. If you don't mind, would you take a minute and just tell us a little bit more about who you are?
Well, to back up, I started out as a cartoonist for the Houston newspaper, and that moved me into doing stand-up. And then I've done stand-up most of my life. I mean, everywhere. I've had Comedy Central specials. I've done 6 albums. Actually working on a new album right now. But when Trump was running for president, I really got more on board of the political kind of stuff, because I just saw what a mess we had become. And it was really nice to see Trump open people's eyes about things, because I've been saying some of the same stuff for like 20 years. Like I did an album several years ago that was kind of like, see, I've been saying this. And so I started doing the character videos, because I'd had some acting background, and so I just started creating these different characters for the internet, and a couple of them have really caught on.
Yeah, I saw on your Facebook page, it said that you've opened concerts for several artists. I see Dolly Parton, Tanya Tucker, Winona Judd. I'm from Georgia, so I'm a down home Southern girl. I like those people.
They are super people. I was Dolly Parton's opening act for a while. I toured with the band, and I would open the show, and then I'd come back later in the show, and I would play Elvis and sing with Dolly.
That is amazing. So you're a musical artist too, then?
A little bit of everything. As my father used to call me, that jack of all trades, and a master of none, or whatever.
I say the same thing about myself. That's great. Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk to you about all of that today. So you are making another album, you said? So another music album?
No, it's a comedy album.
Oh, okay.
Stand-up. Yeah.
So
yeah, that's all the albums that I've done. It's been comedy albums.
Okay, that's awesome. So let's see. What you call yourself a conservative comedian, right?
Right.
So could you tell us what's the hardest thing about being a comedian, a conservative comedian, especially in an age where a lot of comedians are super liberal, and you don't get a lot of real awesome conservative comedians anymore.
Well, that's true, and there are a lot of awesome conservative comedians. It's the industry that just tries to hold them down and tell everybody, look, there's just not any funny conservative comics. When the public knows better. That's what angers a lot of people. They want to see more of that, but they're told they're just not there, and that's not true. And I went out on tour earlier this year with a group called the Deplorables, and we did stand up in Nashville and several other big cities. I'm trying to think right off the top, but we're gonna go out again because the response was so good.
That's amazing. The space for conservative comedy seems like a very tough space. You have people like Roseanne, who make an off-color joke and almost ruin a career over it. So
right. And then you can see the other side of that coin, where the left can do the same thing,
Right.
by calling somebody a C word, and
Mhm.
they're not chastised at all. Their show isn't even taken off the air that one night.
Right. Right. There seems to be a double standard with no consequences. Comedy is supposed to be offensive and push the line of
Yeah.
what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But when you're conservative, that line seems to be moved farther back.
Right. No, and I agree that comedy is supposed to be offensive, and I don't mean offensive in a way that it has to be blue all the time. But
Right.
I tell people that comedy has a punchline, and a punchline has to take the punch. That's the victim. So you are making fun of something constantly, and in this new liberal kind of don't hurt anybody's feelings, you can't make fun of anything or anybody, or you're that evil white patriarch.
Right. Yeah. So on the flip side, we talked about what's the hardest part of being a conservative comedian. What would you say would be the most rewarding part of being a conservative comedian?
That you actually see people agreeing with you. I mean, there's nothing, but it's kind of like when if a musician writes a song that everybody loves, you're like, yeah. So it's the same kind of like, yes, people do agree. Yes, there's still some of us out there. Yes, we still, have not lost control of this world yet.
Right. It's nice to know, to get that validation that there are still people out there who haven't gone so radically far, to the other side, and they agree and they enjoy, the conservatism and the comedic relief and all of that.
Right. And I'm sure you kind of feel the same way, don't you, as a journalist or a broadcast person, that you got in it for the same type of reason, that you wanted people to feel the same way you did, right?
Exactly. You're exactly right. Especially here on New Right Network, we're, a big group of volunteer people who just wanted to have their voices heard. I was just talking with someone this morning about how, and maybe you can tell me if you agree, that I don't think that the majority of this country feels the way that the liberals feel. They just speak the loudest and get the most airtime.
Exactly. And Trump is right about, fake news, because that's been pushed at us for so long. We didn't realize that we were lied to. I mean, a lot of us did. That's what I'm saying. Like when I did an album several years ago, we saw it and couldn't get people to wake up. You know what I mean? It was almost like you were walking among the zombies that just like, I don't think I got it on the news. It has to be true. I saw it on the internet. It must be right.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right. And it's really been refreshing, having someone in office like Donald Trump, who is not your typical, Republican politician who's going to go in there and yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, and, yes, sir, no, sir, and just do what is expected of them and not push back. He pushes the envelope very far, which has, I feel, allowed people like you and other conservative outlets, journalists and the such, to finally take a step forward and be like, hey, wait a minute, this is not how we feel. There are still many Americans, I would say the majority of Americans, who feel this other way.
Yeah. Well, not to get too well, I guess we can. This is more a political thing, but like HR departments and companies, I think, has been one of the worst things that's ever happened. I mean, I know you need to keep track of things, but if somebody can just say, I'm offended and you're written up, or I'm offended and you can lose your job, that made people be quiet and not be honest.
Right.
If somebody wants to throw a gay pride party, you can either attend or not, or you can say, I don't like it, but then you're in trouble. Well, we have a hater over here in cubicle 6. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's ironic. I was having a conversation earlier, and we were touching on some of these topics that you and I are talking about here, and how everybody has become so offended by everything. And what is ironic to me is that we, as conservatives, can't be offended by things. Otherwise, we get labeled as, like you said, a homophobic, racist, misogynist, anything, just because we might not like something, or we don't want to attend it, or we were like, no, not for me, move on.
Yeah, not for me. And it doesn't mean you hate it. You just, like you
Right.
said, this is not for me. Like I have several, especially in this industry, and this is going to sound like one of those typical cliches. I've got lots of gay friends, or I've got lots of black friends. You know how that goes, but that's true. I mean, we're all friends, and it doesn't mean we have to agree about every. That's the thing that's changed. You don't have to agree anymore. They want us to think alike and act alike and walk alike. They want us to be those what are those characters from the video games I keep seeing the memes about? You know, the non-specific characters.
Yeah,
you know,
the avatars.
right. You're just supposed to just agree and be, yes, thank you, I will take that money and go back to my cubicle, thank you very much.
Well, it's not equality, it's conformity.
Right, exactly.
So it's really awesome to, have, you in this space, because you can push the envelope as a comedian. You can say what everyone's thinking and afraid to say, and start opening up that conversation for people to be like, you know what, we don't have to be quiet. We don't have to sit back and accept things. And being a comedian specifically, because it's expected, and accepted as a comedian to push the envelope and to, push beyond the boundaries of what people would say out loud. I feel like it's a really, really great space for you to be in and be a conservative and help, push out the conservative voice.
Well, one of the things that I love is after a show to have people come up and say thank you. They will actually come up and go, thank you, I'm so glad to hear somebody say that, or thank you, that reinforced what I've been telling my wife, or like that kind of thing. That's very refreshing.
Absolutely, that's awesome. So I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite joke to tell, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us on the air?
Well, I tell a lot of stories. My bits are like, longer stories.
Uh-huh.
But one of my favorite things that I've been doing lately is about kids with cell phones. It annoys me to see a child with a cell phone, because I didn't have a cell phone. Most people didn't have a cell phone, and when I hear somebody justify it by going, well, I need to know where they are, and I'm like, be a parent, tell them where to be. And the audience will go crazy, because it's like telling people, that's right, just be a parent. You don't have to have a gadget to raise your child. Right.
No, I see both sides of the spectrum, because my kids have cell phones.
Well, but you probably are giving them that because you know that they're trustworthy. Like, I don't think a lot of parents do it because they just give them to them, and then they can't understand how they got in trouble or they were sexting somebody in class.
Right.
Because you give them a cell phone, you give them a door to the adult world of the internet.
Right. And that is very true. There's a lot of desensitizing that has happened with kids these days. And, a lot of things have changed. I know whenever I was a kid, I didn't have a cell phone either. I didn't have a cell phone until I was almost out of high school.
Yeah.
And I had to get it myself and pay for it myself.
See, there you go. And that's why you are where you are in this position today. You realize the value of those things.
Right. Right. Well, where can we listen to you more? I know you said you're going to be going on tour, and you said you're working on another album. Is there other places where people can listen to you as well?
Well, I'm all over the internet. I've got my website, Facebook and Twitter, which is like Steve McGrew or Steve MUDFLAP McGrew, depending which one you do. But my big character that was the breakout is Liberal Larry. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos for Liberal Larry. It's where I try to do these where it's the typical, stereotypical liberal, where he says the dumbest things possible. And it's people really seem to like that, because they watch it and they can't figure out if it's real or not.
Right.
So the comments are the most fun to read, because they think he's real, but the conservative people who follow me go, I love reading the comments because the stupid people are agreeing with you.
Oh my gosh, that's great. I actually haven't seen that. I'm going to have to check that out when we get off of here.
Liberal Larry and Tucker the Trucker. There's the other one I do called Tucker the Trucker, which is the polar opposite of Larry, where he's just I'll say balls to the wall kind of redneck truck driver, where he says all the wrong things.
Right. Oh, that's great. So can I ask you where the MUDFLAP came from?
That was my radio DJ name. I did morning radio here in Denver for several years. I won 3 CMA awards, Country Music Awards. Got a Marconi for best radio personality, and it was Kelly Jonathan and MUDFLAP was the name of the show.
Oh, okay. I was wondering where the mud flap came from, but it does make you recognizable.
Yeah, a lot more people can remember the name MUDFLAP over Steve.
Right. And there's only one mud flap that I know of, but I know many Steves.
See?
So that's really great. So before we get off of here today, is there anything else that you'd like to add or just to tell our viewers about anything?
Well, I just want people to stay strong. I think people start to get weary. I've talked to several people that are Trump supporters and have been Trump supporters, but they're getting tired of fighting. They're tired of arguing. They're tired of seeing, the battle on TV every night. And I just think you have to stay with it. I mean, it almost is a war, and you can't give up.
Absolutely. It's definitely a war, and we may have won some battles, but the war is not over.
Exactly. And I know people that they tell me, they go, I was such a Fox News fan, but now I'm turning it off because I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
And I go, well, you can't just give up. I mean, switch to something. Listen to this program. Listen to some other conservative programming. Don't just throw up your hands and go, I'm done. I can't listen anymore.
I agree. What would you say going into the election? I think the Trump election kicks off today down in Orlando. So things are starting to get into full gear. And here in the next, 6 months or so, it's going to be election year. What would you say would be the most important thing for people to remember going into election year? And what can they do to find that voice? Like you have the voice with the comedy, and we have the voice here with New Right Network. What advice would you give them to make a difference?
I would say just to keep focus on how everything did get better. The economy's better. Jobs are better. Minority unemployment, highest unemployment ever. Just stay positive and don't pay any attention to what the left is saying about it's all attack. That's all attack, and they're not giving any credit to what's happening. And America really is great again.
Absolutely. So we focus on keeping America great now.
Exactly. Keeping America. That's a great slogan. Keep America great.
Yep. It is. I agree with you too. People get tired, and it's been a long 3 or 4 years here where we've been even before the election and during the primaries and stuff to 2016 and all that. It's exhausting with all the fighting, and it's just the liberals are not giving up, and they go on and they make big noise, and it's exhausting to feel like we're fighting a losing battle. But good to remind people of all the positive things and the wins that we've had and the things that are to come if we just stay strong and don't give up.
Right. And I like to tell people, remember, we're the sane party. The conservatives we're mostly sane people. If you look at the other side, I mean, there are some nuts. I mean, seriously, it's almost like the Democratic Party is drawn every mental patient to that side of the party. I mean, when you listen to them speak, they don't make sense. They just demand things. It's name calling. It's the communism side of it. How are you supposed to get the money to pay for this? I have no idea, but we're going to do it. You know what I mean? It's like how are people still even paying any attention to that? It's almost like having a kid in school that's you've got that one guy that disrupts the classroom, that one person, and you're like, can we just get rid of that?
Right. Yeah. Also, I was mentioning to someone this morning, the left has done such a good job of brainwashing their base. You have, feminists that support policies that, would hurt them, or, migration of people from countries that want to kill them. The same thing with the LGBT community, and then the African American community. All of these communities have listened for so long to the left, and the policies and the people and the plans that they support are all stuff that's working against them. It's insane.
Yeah, we need to bring in more people to throw us off the roof.
Right, exactly.
And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who, here we go, a gay friend who he did tell me that he goes, the thing has gotten out of hand when you start supporting perversion and not preference.
Right.
Like it used to just be, you were gay, that's who you are. But now when you're like, hey, 9-year-old boys should be able to dress in drag. You're like,
Yes.
hold on now. You're setting us back.
Exactly. Now, speaking of that, did you hear about the straight pride that they're trying to put on? I think it's in Boston.
Yeah, it's in Boston. I tweeted out about that. I was like, sign me up.
Oh, right. Yeah, and the left and the liberals are going absolutely crazy about it. But here we come back with the hypocrisy like that we have between the conservative comedians and the liberal comedians. And now we have it with the conservative side versus the liberal side. Here, it's okay to have a gay pride parade where the things that you just mentioned were occurring. But for some reason, it's absolutely horrible to even conceive of the idea of having a white pride parade.
Right. Well,
white, not white, straight.
I do this bit every once in a while. I've started bringing it back. I do it more. It's about gay pride parades and how that's like, nobody would care. Nobody would care at all if it was thousands of men and women, and just holding hands and saying, love everybody.
Right.
But when you've got a 15-foot penis costume and a 6-foot drag queen in a butterfly costume screaming, we're just like you. You're like, well, no, I don't have a sparkler hanging out of my ass, Papillon.
Point well made. That's funny.
do you see what I'm saying? I mean, like nobody would care if you were. It's taking it to a different level these days. It's not about I'm gay and accept me. It's like you were doing some of the freakiest crap in the world in the streets and kids, and it's on the news, and we're supposed to just be totally okay. I'm okay that you're gay. I'm okay that you're a human, but I'm not okay that you're trying to make perversion a normalcy.
Right. What you do in your bedroom behind closed doors is your business. But when you start putting it on the street in front of children, it's a problem.
Right. I've even said, I go, hey, if you want to be naked, buttered up with cowboy boots, chasing each other around the room, that actually sounds fun to me too. I just won't be doing it on the street.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And there's one, pushing the envelope one way, but pushing the envelope that way is it's too far. It's too much.
It's too much. And I think a lot of people went, hold on. Nope, I'm not taking this anymore. I'm just not.
I really hope that people, will keep pushing forward and keep fighting back, not just, against perversion in the streets, but, well, that's a big one, but against, all of these things that people are trying to normalize and make acceptable and normal. And, like I was saying before, I think that there was a period of time, Republican politicians didn't help this, where it was just be quiet, keep your mouth shut, keep your eyes down, and don't say anything because you might be called a name. And
right. Well, that's what they did for so long.
Yes.
They would just label you. It hurt my career. I actually got in trouble back in the 90s. I was never a liberal. I have never been. I've always been a conservative. So I was doing Clinton jokes back in the 90s because I didn't like Clinton.
Right.
And it cost me work with HBO. I was up for an HBO special, and they actually didn't want to give me this is a quote, a platform for my hate speech, because
oh my gosh.
Yeah, but and I wasn't doing anything other than making fun of Clinton and saying, I was talking about the Monica Lewinsky thing, because I don't know how far you guys take it on the podcast here, but I was just talking about those subjects and how, hey, Clinton couldn't get one at home. Well, neither can I. But it's that kind of thing.
You're free to say whatever it was you're going to say. We're good.
You know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing. Yeah, it's like, so they just, if you're not towing the line in Hollywood, you are not one of us.
Right.
If you don't say Clinton, because I was like, hey, he lied to the public. What does that say to our children? That's right. One thing. I go, there's people in jail for perjury. So why isn't he in jail as to show our kids this is not what you do? Well, the economy is so good. These are the conversations I was having with agents and managers at the time. Well, the economy is so good, people just don't care. Well, they're supposed to care. See, that make me angry and angrier, and that fuel my conservative rage on stage,
Right.
which hurt me even more,
Well, I'm glad that you stuck by it and kept pushing forward. Even though you got pushback, because now look where you are now.
Exactly. I was raised in a home where you're always supposed to do right and wrong. And when I was little, my dad raised cattle. So I really grew up around a farm people. And I was raised that your word is the only thing that you have. Like,
right.
Always be honest. If you say you're going to do something, stick to it. If you waver, then people can't trust you. So if this is what you believe, stick to it.
Absolutely. I agree. That's a very good standard to live by. And I think a lot of us were raised that way. And unfortunately, there's a generation right now that was not raised that way. And maybe from the way that they are now, the generation behind them and their parents might see the mistakes of their predecessors, and hopefully we can change that and raise up a new generation that has those same standards and values.
I'm hoping, and I've talked to some of my friends about this, and to maybe change the course of things. I'm not against the possibility of like a mandatory 2-year military like Israel does.
Right.
Just to help kids kind of figure out right and wrong and leadership. And because I see so many like now that will just quit a job because they were told to do something. Like, I don't want to do it, so I'm not working there.
Right.
That doesn't help you in life.
Generation.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's the participation trophy generation.
Yes. Like I have a couple of friends that run restaurants, and they tell me that this younger generation is really hard because if they don't want to come to work, they just won't come. And
right.
You go, when I've got a restaurant to run and a waiter doesn't show up because there was a concert they wanted to go to, because there's this attitude is not helpful at all in the business world.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of scary to know that, the older that that generation gets, the different leadership positions that they possibly could be in. But we're just gonna have to get through it, I guess.
I love what you just did. That you realize like, this is not good.
Yes, not.
You really yeah, we got to fix this.
Well, Steve, it was good having you on here today. Maybe we can get you to come back and talk to us a little bit more.
I would love to, because I do a podcast myself called Remasculate.
Okay.
And so I'm always up for anything to get the word out or the message out.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about getting you on here again. Let's see. Thank you for joining us today on the New Right official podcast of New Right Network. You can follow us on social media at New Right Network on Twitter, Facebook, and most every other platform. And Steve, what's your handle for people to follow you on social media?
I'm on Twitter. Well, I got banned. Let me back this up. I had 113,000 followers, and Twitter killed my account for something that I said. So I've started over, and I'm at GREWTHE. So it's Grew the. It's the only thing I could get that was close to my name. But I'm building back up on that. And then they could find me on Facebook at Steve McGrew or Steve MUDFLAP McGrew. I have two accounts on Facebook.
All right, everybody, you heard that. Let's fight back against censorship, and let's go follow Steve on Twitter and help him build his account back up. That was at Grew the.
Yes, thank you so much.
You are certainly welcome, sir.
You've been listening to New Right Network, mobilizing, countering, energizing. Online at newrightnetwork.com.